Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center. Today I have a very exciting book. I say it's exciting because I'm all excited about it. And it's a book about words. Actually, the word is the word. Now, many times in English, and I trust that everybody has taken some kind of grammar school English and high school English, let alone college. But even then, when we're talking about words, and everybody's used a dictionary, again, I trust, and you look at the source of words, maybe we'll say offhand that, and it is the truth, that most words in dictionary they'll say is Latin, some sort of German, some kind of ancient language of some sort, but very few Hebrew words. Now that's very interesting because in a way it really contradicts Torah, Judaism, ancient Jewish literature. Why? Again, the Tower of Babel, again, not to get into all the details, I'm sure everybody has heard about it, that the people in the land, right from the Bible, that they want to build up a tower to God, going to fight and rebel against God. God says, oh, you're going to do that against me, I'll get you back. Just because you're so unified, getting together for an evil cause, now I'm going to disperse you throughout the world. How do you disperse people? Well, you make them speak different languages. I'm not next door to Chinese people because I can't get friends with people who only talk Chinese. I don't know Chinese. I'm going to talk to people who know English or my language, maybe Yiddish because I'm Jewish, a little bit of Hebrew. I don't know any Chinese, and a person who only knows Chinese can't get along with me. It's going to be a very short-lived relationship. So therefore, language is a very much of a commonality between cultures. And exactly what happened, obviously, that the people who spoke the same language says, come on, let's get together and relate to each other. And other people went to their land and said, okay, well, we're going to relate to them. That is the Tower of Babel story. Now, but it's very interesting. The question you could say is, okay, all languages were changed then. So what was the first language? What were they talking before all the languages were changed? This is a very interesting, maybe you've never heard about it, maybe even thought of the thought. It's an obvious thought when you talk about it. And the major idea that the Torah tries to say is the basic language at the time of the creation was Hebrew, believe it or not. It's actually, it's not my opinion, it's a very classic, really, a Torah idea and Jewish idea. It's not really brought out that many times. It doesn't say clearly in the Bible. It says they were all speaking one language, and that one language, the Rashi, the major commentary, says it was Hebrew. Nonetheless, Torah Judaism says Hebrew is the first language. And when I talk to, of course, groups of people and Hebrew school people, and the topic happened to be ancient Jewish language and culture, and we're talking beyond 3,000 years ago, even 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, and I would bring up this point, the way Torah's perspective on the world is. Now, most people are bewildered when they hear it. Maybe you are also when you're hearing this. And I could say, you know, the Bible says that people come from Mars and they inhabited Earth. They were UFOs, you know, some science fiction story. And I would get the same response. Yeah, cute, nice, a little ridiculous. Okay. But, again, it's not my idea and it's Torah idea, and there's a lot of beautiful ideas in Torah. So what about it? Because if you're going to say Hebrew was the major language, or really now the only language, and all the language came from it, well, then you'd have to say that there's some origins of our language, English and other languages, really rooted in Hebrew. And as I just started introducing, really you don't see, and it's interesting, you can go back to your dictionaries yourself, I mean your bigger dictionaries, and see the root of many words. And very few of them will say that Hebrew was the major language, the basic language where this English word was derived from. So in a way I was just caught, really, and I'm not an authority on languages. I'm a rabbi, and I really couldn't go beyond that. I know what the Torah says, and I accept it. I know that there's not too much to connect and prove it, so I left it at that. But that's why I say I'm totally excited about this book I picked up, The Word. And it says the dictionary that reveals the Hebrew source of English. So even though that Hebrew, of course, hopefully know that Hebrew is written in different kind of letters, and English is different kind of letters than Hebrew, of course. On the other hand, and this is what we're working on now, is actually the pronunciation, the sounds of the letter, which we will give into and, of course, give you many examples. But together with that, it's hard to put a major chart on here, but he does have the Hebrew alphabet, and many English letters look fairly similar, if we can say that, fairly similar to the Hebrew letters. Now, it's a little bit derived away. I'm not going to say that it looks exactly like one, but maybe with script in one way or another, it would look like it. So that even is a very strong derivative. Again, into his thesis about it, really the major book, which is a very big book, talks about every specific letter. And you think, okay, you're going to send me, show me 5, 10 letter, words, okay, maybe the dictionary, and I really don't know how many, but it's just a few if you look up in a major English dictionary. And here, he's got thousands of words, and they're very much stem from the Hebrew in many cases. And that's really, you could say maybe I'm trying to tell you some news, and that's why I'm so excited about, because I didn't know it either. I never was reminded. For example, just an easy one right at the beginning, an abbot. An abbot is, of course, a monastery, and we know in the Christian religion they call their priesthood as father. So an abbot is like a place of the fathers. Abbot, fathers. So what's the word for Hebrew for fathers in Hebrew? Avos. Avot in modern Hebrew. The S sound and the T sound is interchangeable in Hebrew. And there you go. You have who I didn't even think about it myself. It's very interesting. I know the English word, I knew the Hebrew word, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together. That's why I'm so excited about it, because he takes in so many words that says, yeah, you're right, you're really right, that here's so many Hebrew words that really sound so much, that really, it's not only sound so much, it wasn't like, ooh, look, there's a connection here and there, but now, once we make that statement that Hebrew was the source language, we really could see that English in many, many words, in many, many ways, has some linkage to Hebrew. And we can build a thesis, which this person does. He's a professor at Yeshiva University. And he does make a thesis that the English language can look and see their sources and their origin in the Hebrew language. Well, let's see what he has to say. But like I say, I'm very excited, and I hope you will be also. In the beginning were the words. Come with me on an archaeological dig. Let us remove the sands of millennia. We are deep in the valley of Shinar, reconstructing the Tower of Babel. One brick, one word at a time. Together we will change the way we speak about the way we speak. Put away your dictionaries with their charming old-fashioned myths of standardized spelling or pronunciation, with their superstitious tribal need to create a new language, Indo-European, out of ignorance of the ancient one. Take out instead your Bible and a pair of human ears. The Word speaks to you. Don't worry if you've never read anything on language or if you've never heard a Hebrew word. You will soon know that you've never heard a word that wasn't Hebrew. Let the language of Eden echo in your soul like the sound of your mother's voice in a dream, calling you home from far away and long ago. If you love words and truth, you'll bear with me. If you are a language professional, you'll need far more patience, even courage, to hear me out. Yes, I began from the biblical, given that the Hebrew is the mother tongue. It seems to me they have begun to prove that all the earth was of one speech with a unified vocabulary. The more words have changed, the more they have remained the same. The coincidence criers cannot be happy with the mathematical odds of my having compiled all this data. Hebrew vocabulary has much affinity with English as it has with Arabic. More English words can be clearly linked to biblical Hebrew than to Latin, Greek, or French. Most known English words or their cognates appear in this book. The English words that got away didn't represent holes in my thesis. Many words have simply mutated beyond recognition, so the unused half of my files will wait for a later, bolder edition. With all my idol breaking, I have remained too true to conservative linguistic rules to be iconoclastic. I am grateful for my brief training in linguistics and for the century of research into Indo-European roots that often made my discoveries possible. I stand on the shoulder of giants, though some linguists wished I'd get off their backs. It was only a century and a half ago when a few German scientists brutalized Mother Hebrew and ripped her children from her arms. Languages without blonde hair and blue eyes were systematically banished from the Germanic realm, packed into carefully marked boxcars and shipped eastward to overcrowded and undernourished departments like Near Eastern studies. No longer would Near Eastern, Asian, or African dialects be called a brother language. These tongues and their speakers were said to have evolved from separate and by inferior inference familiar of apes. New laws were instituted against the age-old concept of a universal primary language. The irritating Judeo-Christian myth about Hebrew was dismissed as a typical creationist fantasy which could not stand up to the rigors of scientific regularity. The new linguistics never bothered to scientifically disprove the time-honored belief in the primacy of Hebrew, because like most scientists and atheists, they work from deep religious convictions. With a sigh of relief, German culture was declared Judenrein, Jew-free, accepted into Indo-Aryan axis of languages with Baltic Slavic, Celtic, Classic Greek, and Latin, with all their alleged offspring, and even Indo-Iranian. Despite Abraham and David's intimacy with Hittites in the Bible, Hittite under the euphemism Anatolian, was allowed to hold an honorary seat at the same linguistic table to the Germanics. Hittite was long dead after all, and who is to say that Hebrew itself wouldn't have been venerated if only the Jews were finally extinct? But no, in search of an honorable ancestor for the Aryan race, the linguist developed a theoretical prototype language that could even claim Sanskrit as a child. And so for the past several decades, Western historical linguists have been the proud Dr. Frankensteins, creator of a Proto-Indo-European language that curiously favors the Germanic element. Who would research Hebrew as a root language when even the PhDs in Semitic hung Hebrew out on a limb called West Semitic? Nobody uncovered a clay tablet of Proto-Semitic, but surely the argument went Hebrew evolved from older, more cumbersome languages. The de-evolution of words and the ongoing corruption of humankind was simply not considered. The logic consistent with Bible criticism. If the Babylonians and other peoples, including American Indians, all have a flood myth, then the biblical flood will also be a myth, borrowed from an older source or a coincidental contrivance invented to explain a natural phenomena. It was out of the question to think that Noah's flood was a fact, that only God-given Bible got the facts right, uncolored by cultural corruption over the generations. Returning to language, the Hebrews are not the only people said to have invented the myth of primordial tongue. They are the only surviving human entity, however, to preserve that language, to study its boundless superhuman profundity, and engineering with lifelong joy. Hebrew was spoken long before there was a Judea or an Abraham, but Hebrew was too much associated with Jews to be tolerated. The last group of Westerners to take up the lost paradise of Hebrew included 17th century Englishmen like John Milton and his Puritan counterpart in colonial America. This book has roots in my own history in Plymouth, Massachusetts. As a child, I would take Sabbath morning walks to places where I read the Hebrew tombstones and diaries of pilgrims like William Bradford. Governor Bradford was a new Hebrew in the promised land of America. He reverently desired to study God's Word in its original tongue. I don't know why so many Christian Jews have settled for less. The curriculum of Harvard was full of Hebrew, and an early graduate thesis at Harvard concerned Hebrew as a mother tongue. Noah Webster's etymology, discredited for 200 years now, were full of English words traced to Shemitic secrets, sources. Most significant of all, in a vote in the Continental Congress has gone the other way. America and much of today's world will now be speaking Hebrew. It's true that the many times Continental Congress wanted to make Hebrew as the major language of America. Decades of reconstructing theoretical common ancestors of the German, Slavs, Italics, Hellenic, Indo-Iranians, etc., have ironically legitimized what Noah Webster in the Bible would call Japhetic language. The third son of Noah, Ham, is behind the generic term for African languages, and white Gentiles in the linguistic community have no trouble with the evidence of a related Hamito Semitic language family. Let the blacks and Jews share the ghetto, whispers the professors, as long as Indo-European remains lily white. was a little bird that first whispered to me the obsessive dream that this book would be for me, the nightmare that the word must be for anti-Semitism. That bird was a sparrow, who Indo-European root spare represents the oldest generic word for bird in the Western languages. I knew a tzipor, Hebrew generic term for bird, when I saw one. I promptly left graduate school and began treating the dictionary though it were compiled by fallible human beings. I was in the next decade to learn things about Hebrew that sadly are never taught. Like physics or biology, language Hebrew is another divine creation that dazzles the puny human mind with its complex simplicity and ordered chaos. The three-letter Hebrew root is a chemical element composed of and charged by the dance of a pair of two-letter roots exchanging electrons. Only the dynamics of Hebrew with its built-in synonym and antonym system explain why leaf and folio, now remember this because the vowels are not that important in the Hebrew, because really the Torah, the Bible, is written without vowels. They were just put in later. So leaf, LF, and folio, FL, mean the same. And why bad and better are similarly sounding opposites. Only the vocabulary of biblical Hebrew contains the common denominators of otherwise unlinkageable words, both within and without the traditional language families. Only after mastering Hebrew can a person fully understand words in English, Basque, or Swahili. Because the majesty of Hebrew is only faintly visible in its offspring, it is no wonder that intelligent men can still maintain that most words are arbitrary and meaningless, or that language is the result of cayman grunting. Of course, some of these same brilliant academians will insist that a chimp at a typewriter will come up with a Shakespearean sonnet if given enough time, about 8 billion years. As far back as biblical time, the tribe of Ephraim, linked by some Christian theologians to the British royalty, pronounced Hebrew Shibboleth as Sibboleth. And the word gets around, it will no longer seem odd that Hebrew Shimshon came to be spelled Samson. You no longer have to be drunk to read source as Shoresh, the Hebrew word for root or source. You need only be intoxicated with the truth and to read the word with a clear, unbiased mind. Now, I just want to bring out to you that there's many different letters in Hebrew, and it's very hard to start teaching you the Hebrew language in a few minutes, and even though that it would be worth a show in its own right to teach Hebrew, maybe we'll do that soon. So stay tuned. But on the other hand, I did promise you, and I will come through with many different examples that, and there really are thousands of them, so it's very interesting that you could learn it. Now, one of the major points, and I don't want to get into all the rules here, I think it'll be too complicated for the scope of this show. But again, let's just note that main thing, that the vowels are not that important. Like I just said, that in the Bible, that they're not written, the vowels, they are important to be pronounced, but they have a poetic license to be used in many kind of interpretations. For example, I wanted to show you here, Nekev means a hole. Nekev, kev. So what word does that sound like? Cavity. So you see the root words, all right, the N is there, and he works with that also. But kavak, a stomach. Again, that CV, if you want to use that as a root idea, two-letter root word, you have many words that deal with cavity in Hebrew. Kava is, like I say, a belly. Nekev is a hole. So that's what idea of a cavity is. I mean, that's just one idea, but literally there's thousands of them. I'll just go through more. I had a few ones that I wanted to bring out to you over here also. Some may be a little bit odder than the others, a little further, but like he said also that, of course, that language obviously does a little bit change here and there, but if we can see the major words in there, then we wouldn't have really a problem in the root. A collar, ol, is a yoke. Sometimes if you would say in Hebrew, a ol yoke. Oler, a collar, and ol. I mean, you can, like I said, maybe a letter here and a vowel there, but if, like he says, if you let your ears feel it and sense it, then really it's not too far from being. Quafal, This word in the Bible many times means double, kafal. Now, I didn't want to get to all the rules, but I think this is a major idea that you have to sound out now. Now, if I would throw out to you, what's the similarity between a P and an F? Well, you'd say that's two separate letters in the alphabet. What's the connection? But right away, is you're going to see in your own language of English that there is a connection. How do you spell phone? Well, we all know it's P-H-O-N-E. Now, of course, what's P-H? If we wouldn't know how to sound it, we'd say pahone. What's P-H? Pahone, pone. So where does the P mean an F? So I don't know if people know it. I don't know if they teach it in school. I don't remember being told just saying P-H together means a phone, like enough, something like that. G-H, sometimes the H changes to a soft letter. But where does it come from? So he's just saying that the P and an F, and the people who don't know Hebrew, is really the same letter, basically. It's only if you put a little dot, and if you put a dot inside the Fe, it becomes a Pei. So the P and the F, again, and there's no dots in the Torah, so really it's interchangeable, a P sound and an F sound. And like you say, now you understand English a little better from this Hebrew source. A phone, a P, is very close to being an F sound. Even we know it's two totally separate letters, but we see from even the way we spell that sometimes a P could be an F, and where did they get it from? Of course, in Hebrew is totally understandable. So the same idea, and again, using that principle, looking back to kafal. Well, again, let's take the F and make it in a P sound. So we have kapal, or couple. And a couple is a pair, or, well, we say, sometimes you say couple means double a pair. It means the same idea. We're on our way. We have hundreds and hundreds of words that we could actually look at that, like I say, take out maybe the vowels, and we know that, and like even in English today, people in the South, you have to twang your ears to listen to them, because their vowels are also, many people make jokes of me, even though I now am in New England here, but I'm from Chicago, and people even just saying Chicago with a pronounced O there, that they understand that I have a different kind of accent. Frogs, and I say an ant, my aunt, the Florence. So people immediately, anybody knows a little bit of language, just scream out immediately, oh, you must be from Chicago, sometimes Buffalo. But the point is, we know that even in America, let alone England, and they speak differently there, even in America, there is a change of vowels. I have them from Chicago, different than in New England. People in the South, we all know, has more of a drawn-out sense of vowels. So vowels we see could be played with, so to speak. Even in one country, there's just many dialects, and it's not just different letters. It's not the L sound. It's not a P sound. It's the vowels. So I'm saying even nowadays, we could also say there's a license for vowels that in English itself, let alone when we're going from one language to another, we can let the vowels be a little bit loose. And therefore, like I say, if you get the root consonants of words, very much so, you're going to get thousands. It's just amazing to me. And I didn't know about this also. I have to plead ignorance because I really didn't think of them myself, and I never went through it. I always heard about a few, or I'd go through the Bible and say, ooh, that sounds a little similar, but I surely didn't have a few thousand words under my belt to talk about that. So therefore, I'm excited about it, and I think you should be also, because we see that the ancient English, and I'm going to use this as a device for teaching Hebrew. Why that? Because now if I say a word in Hebrew word, well, it doesn't sound alike to English many times. Let's say that. Meaning if I told Yiddish, and I could teach you, and I say this to anybody, teach you the Yiddish language, 200 words right away, and you wouldn't have any problem, and you would know them right away. What's a book in English? A book. Well, that's obvious. A book and a book. A hand is a hand. All right, a little bit, well, again, with a little bit difference with the vowels and a similar sounding words, many words like that. Like I said, there's a solid few hundred words. They could easily, get them in English from to Yiddish, twanging up the vowels a little bit different, and it wouldn't be a hand to a hand. It's not that hard at all, as you can well imagine. But Hebrew is a little bit different. I always thought, and I think I'm going to change my tune. I never said, well, they're English, and there's A book, for example, in Hebrew is a sefer. Now that's a harder connection than a buch, which is in Yiddish. But for example, I would use, for example, to be ragil means to be regular. And that to be habit. You could say you have a person who has a habit and is a normal occurrence, but somebody's regular. A habit is something regular, something you do often and regularly, in a way, is a habit. It really means the same idea. So this way, and I'm going to start teaching Hebrew this way many times, because I think if obviously people know their English, and if they can put ragil to regular, which you can understand there's pretty much a connection, obviously that's going to be an easier word to remember in Hebrew, not like totally, so to speak, foreign word that you never heard before. But if you can connect it to the English language, how much easier that will be to learn the language. And I think that's what I'm going to be doing from now on. I think that's going to be an easier tool. That's why I'm happy about this also, is because this will make Hebrew an easier language for people to learn. And I just wanted to bring out to you, well, we just have only a very few minutes. I did have so many. I really would go through so many of this many times. Here's another one I brought out, rachush. Rachush means wealth. It actually is a biblical word. When the Jewish people left Egypt, they went out with their wealth, rachush. And again, the CH, because there's no guttural ch sound in English, but you do have the CH. Of course, we pronounce this as ch. But on the other hand, a ch and a ch, many people are familiar with Chanukah. Really, it's not Hanukkah with an H sound. Many people can't pronounce it because they're not used to it in English, of course. It's not a sound in English. But you'll sometimes see it with an H sound, Hanukkah, H-A-N, and sometimes you'll see it with C-H-A-N. So it's not Chanukah, but it is, the proper way of pronouncing is Chanukah with a guttural. So you can have your choice of an H or a CH, but that's something CH really could have a consonant tense because there's no really ch sound in Hebrew. So therefore you have really the idea of the ch sound. Rachush, and if let's change the R, of course we have the R as an R, and the guttural ch is a CH, and so therefore we have rich. Instead of rachush, as I said, which is a biblical word, we have rich. There you go. You have rachush as riches. It's so amazing. It really is to see so many words like that, to learn and to be connected. And therefore, like I said at the beginning, maybe we can see truly that since Hebrew was a source language, and it's maybe this man is well, he is a professor at YU and making in his own way a revolution in languages to see really where was the source language of everything. And maybe it'll be, like I say, we can make it as a real tool to make Hebrew more accessible, to learn it, and to make it easier to go from English into Hebrew. And I think this is an important idea for everybody. Like I said, maybe so many times I'm excited about it, and maybe to look into it, you can be excited about it also, because instead of an ancient foreign language that's not known, but really, of course, it is known today, we could learn about Hebrew and credit to it, and it'll be a beautiful experience for everybody, no matter who they are, to learn the Hebrew as a biblical and ancient language that pertains to today. Thank you very much. Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and today's topic is Maimonides. A little bit biographical sketch of the Maimonides Hindu. He lived about 850 years ago, started off his life in Spain, but through the different endeavors of the different persecution. It wasn't the Spanish Inquisition, which, remind yourself, came about 500 years ago in 1492, but there was troubles even 300 years before that. And then Rambam eventually settled in Cairo, in Fez, a suburb of Cairo in Egypt, where he wrote, the main ideas he wrote were of diversified knowledge. And I underlined that 10 times because there was never such a Jewish author that would wrote on so many different fields. The philosophy, people know, the guide for the perplexed. We know about the very important medical books that the Maimonides wrote, and they actually used today also, the medicine and the Rambam, and that would, all these are different subjects we'll have to dedicate a different show to. But today we were going to peek, and I say peek because it's an enormous encyclopedia of ideas in the Sefer Yad Chazaka Mishneh Torah. This is that the Maimonides encyclopedizes the entire Gemara, the Talmud, into very distinct chapters. Before, if one wanted to look into the Talmud, it would be hard to find the direct and bottom line, so to speak, of the Jewish law. So what the Rambam was, that he was, and I say the Rambam because that's a Hebrew acronym for Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, and the English side is just Maimonides. So it's interchangeable, Maimonides in English or Rambam. And Maimonides did take these ideas and put them on in distinct, and every chapter